sporty. So I grew up in the mixed era of like debit cards were just coming out when I was a teenager. They were a newer concept. ATM cards were around, but they weren't like you had to write a check and go to the bank and get your cash. 10 years earlier, the young early 30s now, they never had that. But if I look at Gen X and I look at the boomers, most of them don't know how to use a debit card, or they choose not to because they're not comfortable with it. And so we can't fully get away from it, right? Because we have multiple generations using currency in different ways, which is also very dangerous.
The whole fraud topic is, I hadn't thought about it from a different generational thing, but I, perfect example, like very recently, within the last couple of weeks, someone gave us a fraudulent money order, or cashier's check. And I was like, I don't think I've ever touched a cashier's check in my entire life. I was like, okay. And luckily I was suspicious of it enough that it didn't really get us into any trouble in our business financially, but it did cause Bank of America to close down my bank account for half a day.
A business owner on social media, people know who you are. People know who I am, people know who you are, which puts us as targets, which is probably why you got targeted for that scam. Take that to an NFL level. Take that to an NBA level. Yeah. They are going to look for everything that they possibly can about the player.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Hillary Seiler, known as the Coach Hill, founder of Financial Footwork and author of Train Your Money. She's an entrepreneur, financial wellness speaker, and certified financial education instructor, and widely known as Big Sis to the NFL, NBA, and NCAA teams. I'm really excited to hear about what all that means. So first, though, Hillary, thank you for being on the show today. Thanks for joining me and taking the time out of your schedule. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we start just with a bit of your background? Tell me about yourself. Tell me, kind of what brought you to where you are today, and then we'll dive in from there.
Absolutely. We'll make this short and sweet, the 60-second version, and then we can dive in. I have been a financial coach for the last 16 years. When I left university, it fell in my lap. Would never have known that this was going to happen. And I help people handle money on a daily basis. It just so happens that a few of my clients are pretty well known, 12 NFL teams, one NBA team, and a few NCAA organizations, including LSU, Texas A&M, Oregon State, Boise State. So I've had a really great run. I've been enjoying it. If you would have asked me 15 years ago if you thought I would be doing this, the answer would be no. So it's definitely been a ride, and it's been a fun entrepreneurial journey that's led me to this point.
I'm sure it has. How does that fall in your lap? I mean, we've had a lot of financial advisors, consultants. I mean, across the gamut on the show. Most of them have like a fairly specific background, but how does that? I would imagine maybe the affiliation with sports teams can fall in your lap, but how do you just get into that space, kind of so accidentally, I guess?
I don't have the traditional background that an advisor or a consultant has. One, I'm an educator, so I don't get paid like they do. Very, very different pay structure. But first and foremost, I'm not a finance head. I'm a speaker. So I was a speech and debate nerd. I actually ranked in high school as one of the best extemporaneous speakers in the country. And I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. Didn't do anything with it after high school. I was like, this was fun. It got me a grant or two to go to college. Nothing big, very small dollar figures. And I realized as I got older that was a superpower for me. I could get in front of a room and really master the crowd, help them understand a concept, and then implement it. And that is what led to me creating Financial Footwork and working with the NFL. So I backdoored finance from a speaking perspective. I just happened to have a finance degree, and then I worked in banking for a very long time. So I still worked in and am still very active in the financial world. I just came about it a different way. And so when people say, well, how did you do it? I went and learned everything I could about banking, credit, mortgages, real estate, and I worked in it up until 2023. I was actually an active mortgage lender. I was slinging about 30 to 50 million in loans a year, which in mortgage speak is like 80-hour work weeks on top of running a company. And so I was still very much involved in the day-to-day grind of finance while I was building a company and speaking. And I did that for almost a decade before I went full-time with my current company, Financial Footwork.
Okay. And so the current company is, I mean, is it you're sort of exclusively focused on financial education and speaking to athletes? Is that the
The funny part is that's the smallest piece of our business.
okay?
See, we work with mostly corporations,
Okay.
um, from 50 employees to 10,000 plus. We can really do anything in between. We're a boutique financial wellness firm for corporations. It just so happens I got my start in the NFL, and that grew just naturally over the course of a decade. And now we serve 12 NFL teams. I was blessed to get a call from the guy that hired me the first time around for the Dolphins. That was my first NFL contract. He moved to the Spurs, called me and said, "You're coming to work for me." And so now I'm lucky enough to work with the Spurs, and I love that locker room. I love those guys. I see them about 8 times a year. Um, and yeah, it's a piece of our business, but there's only so much time the NFL actually has. So it's only about, I would say, 75 days out of my year is spent with NFL teams and NBA teams.
Okay. Okay. And so, well, it's interesting. I mean, I told you I'm a big sports fan, so that
Yeah.
particular segment is very exciting to me. But also, I would imagine I would imagine a different conversation when you're talking to, locker room and sports teams versus that sort of corporate type of environment. And largely just, it's a different, usually a different demographic, right? Like the athletes are young. Uh, my understanding is a lot of them don't come from a lot of money and then suddenly have more money than any of us ever imagined. And so I would imagine that that's like a certainly a challenging, challenging, a good challenge to have, I guess, but a challenging thing
Yeah.
to navigate as they, kind of start out. And you hear all kinds of stories of athletes being taken advantage of or going bankrupt or, all kinds of things like that, which I would imagine it's similar struggles to regular people, but like, but
Yeah.
that the it's just magnified. It magnified at a larger scale. So,
Yeah.
I mean, let's just start with kind of a foundation. The people that you're speaking to, where do you have them focus as like a starting point?
It doesn't matter if you're an NFL, NBA player, or you're in your first job. We never learn the fundamentals. So I'm teaching the basics of finance to everyone that I work with. I still meet people in their 60s that are about to retire that still don't know how a credit score works. I meet 30-year-olds who've never written a check. I, funny enough, I was working with someone a couple of days ago. Just they happened to run into me and they're like, "Hey, do you know how I got this check from the IRS and it said it was from the 2021 tax return and I don't know if it's real or not." And I said, "Well, did it come from the Department of Treasury?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, how much was the check for?" She goes, "Well, I don't really know how to read it." And mind you, this is somebody who is a lawyer. She's very high powered in a very large company, and she's like, I didn't know if it was A, real, or B, like how to read it or
Yeah.
what I was looking at." And I was like, that's totally fair because you, early 30s and money has always been digital for you.
Yep.
So to look get a paper check, she's like, "I know to sign it and take it to the bank. I just don't really outside of that." And I was like, that's it's interesting what you don't know, you don't know. And that is where I tell everyone who's like, "Oh, athletes are so stupid with money." Every time I hear that, it just infuriates me because you might be 50 or 40 years old and you've had life lived and you've learned over time. You're
Yep.
handing millions of dollars, in some cases six or low seven figures. Most NFL players are not actually millionaires. It's a very common misconception.
Yeah.
NBA players are a different story. NFL players have different income altogether. But you're asking a 22-year-old who's never been truly exposed to money, never been truly exposed to how the world works, to A, make logical, informed, unemotional decisions with their money, and then understand how to hire and fire the right people. At 22, if you gave me 500 bucks, I would have blown it. We're giving them $885,000 as the rookie salary this year, and people get mad when they don't know how to handle it. So that's where I come in. That's why I created the company. I created was actually to help NFL players just because they were my friends, and that's how I got in. Realizing that they had no idea how to do any of this, and everyone that was helping them wanted part of the pie. And we don't take money from players; the teams pay us. So it was very good for us to be non-vested in anything they were doing and be just a second set of eyes to say, you're getting taken advantage of. Now, where they get taken advantage of at 22 to 26, if I flip it to employees and corporate America, it's the 60 plus that I worry about. It is the elderly abuse. It is they've saved all of their lives. They're living off this big pot of money, and now people are taking advantage of them because they're not familiar with technology, or they're lonely, or there's, insert issue here. We're seeing NFL players at a young age, but then if you flip it, people don't realize it's happening to our elderly population the same way. It's just you're not hearing about it because it's not as front and center. So when I'm working with employees, one of the biggest things that I'm talking about is elderly abuse, protecting your parents, protecting your future wealth. If you're looking at building generational wealth, that starts with you, and that means you protect your parents or your brothers and sisters, and it also means you have to teach your kids what that looks like. And it's an interesting dynamic because 10 years ago, this conversation wouldn't be happening. So I see it in all cases across the US. It just so happens that the NFL and the NBA, there's only 2,000 NFL players and less than 400 NBA players at any given time. Their demographic is very, very small. Their grouping is very, very small, and everybody knows their name. So anything that they do is that much more exponentially publicized.
Yeah, a lot of really good points there. And I mean, the one thing about, athletes are so stupid with money. Like, most of us are stupid with money.
Yes.
Virtually everybody is stupid with money. It's just nobody's handing us millions of dollars when we're, 22. It's just not, it's just a different scale of stupid with money. Like, when you have never had that money and you think, somebody, you sign a contract for, again, I mean, it varies. And
Yes.
another great point is, like, you hear, what you hear about are the big contracts, and it's like, especially in the NFL, you're going to hear about those guys that are making 30, 40, 50 million dollars a year, but there's a salary cap in the NFL, and there's 50 plus players on each team. So if 5 of those guys are making $30 million a year, but the other 50 of them have to split up the rest, like, it's not as much money as you might think in all instances.
You're correct.
The point being, like, yeah, I mean, most of us are not, we don't know how to be smart about money. We don't know what our options are. It's you talked about, like, the digital thing. Younger people are used to everything being, I mean, it's silly that everything isn't digital at this point. The fact that we still have to have checks to sign and take to the bank doesn't make any sense to me, but that's a whole nother topic we could talk about. It's like so easy to send money digitally and more safely.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
If and I mean, I'm almost 40, so I grew up in the mixed era of, like, debit cards were just coming out when I was a teenager. They were a newer concept. ATM cards were around, but they weren't, like, you had to write a check and go to the bank and get your cash.
Right.
10 years earlier, the young early 30s now, they never had that. But if I look at Gen X and I look at the boomers, most of them don't know how to use a debit card, or they choose not to because they're not comfortable with it. And so we can't fully get away from it, right? Because we have multiple generations using currency in different ways, which is also very dangerous. And people don't realize that with scams getting better and better and better, it gets more dangerous for the different styles of currency, which is a whole other conversation in and of itself. But, like, if I take it to my NFL players, get off Cash App. I say that, oh my God, I can't tell you how many times a year I say, get the hell off Cash App. You don't need a Cash App. If you want to change money, Zelle and Venmo. And even with Venmo, don't link your bank accounts. Link a debit card you can cancel not the actual physical bank account. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's protective reasons. I know that PayPal owns Venmo. I understand the hierarchy. But
Right.
again, when you have that many pieces of digital technology that has access to your banking information, you open yourself up to huge problems. The older generation sees that and fears it. The younger generation has no concept of fraud. So we're dealing with two very polar opposites that both don't understand the other. And that's why we're seeing currencies exchange the way that they do. At least as a financial expert, that is my opinion. I'm sure some banking people would disagree with me.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you, and I'm Gen X. I've been on both sides of it, and from I'm not super tech savvy, but I like technology, and so I understand that those advancements, the benefits are good. I also see the resistance among a lot of people my age and older. But it is very interesting. I mean, the whole fraud topic is, I hadn't thought about it from a different generational thing, but I, perfect example, like very recently, within the last couple weeks, someone gave us a fraudulent money order, or
Yeah.
no, cashier's check. And I was like, I don't think I've ever touched a cashier's check in my entire life. I was like, okay. And luckily I was suspicious of it enough that it didn't really get us into any trouble in our business financially, but it did it did cause Bank of America to close down my bank account for half a day, and it caused QuickBooks to go through like multiple different levels of security verification because of this one single thing. Like,
Yes.
and so that's best case scenario. I had 2 days ruined by it because I had to spend all this time on the phone, but like I didn't lose any money. Had I done what the person who gave me the check was suggesting, I would have lost money. And so, the suspicion of fraud, I know that's not really what we're here to talk about, but it's just an interesting thing to think about from a dynamics of generation and demographics and all of that, and who's using, you mentioned all the different apps, like who's using what to
Yeah.
exchange money. It's like, it's funny to me that you can have like friends on Venmo and like find out what the other people are spending their money
Isn't
on.
that
Like that's just very
uncomfortable?
odd to me.
Yeah. I made mine private. So I was
Yeah,
like, I don't
yeah.
want people to see what I'm spending money on. That's
Right.
again though, younger generation, like if we look at, I'm an older millennial, right? I'm closer to Gen X than I am a true millennial.
Sure.
And even my younger millennials, they're like, oh, I don't care if people see what I'm doing because it's a highlight reel.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I'm like, I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing and where I'm at and how much I'm spending, because that opens them up to knowing a little bit more about my personal financial situation. And I don't want anyone to even know my address, let alone
Yeah.
that I spent $20 on pizza. But that's, again, we're talking about generational shifts. So if we look at fraud, we look at digital currencies, and we look at how actual generations look at money, think about this from an even higher level perspective as business owners, and we can even say pro athletes. As a business owner on social media, people know who you are. People know who I am, people know who you are, which puts us as targets, which is probably why you got targeted for that scam.
Sure.
Take that to an NFL level, take that to an NBA level.
Yeah.
They're going to look for everything that they possibly can about the player, their family, their sisters and their brothers, where they went to school, who their friends are, and they're going to kind of do this data collection on them to then turn around and find a backdoor into getting them to either A, respond, B, send money, any case scenario, right? When it gets to the, hey, I'm a financial advisor who has no credentials and gets these guys to wire them $20 million, it's a different story. But it's at small and large levels that it's happening. And we're starting to see entertainers, we've always seen entertainers and athletes as targets. We're now starting to see mid-sized businesses targeted.
Mhm.
So CEOs, CFOs, executives, manager level, director level at those businesses are now becoming targets because you can see them online. So that happened to a dear friend of mine. He is a director level, high level executive at a semiconductor company in the United States, and he got targeted by a scammer. And this is a guy he didn't even have a social media presence. Nothing, literally nothing. They got a hold of his email, scammed him out of $42,000 in 2 days. And he's a very smart individual. They caused panic. They faked being his bank. And he was like, oh my God, my account is compromised. Well, it wasn't, but he didn't understand how banking works. And then when it all was done, he called me hysterically crying, like, I've lost all of my money. The only thing I have left is retirement because it's housed at a different institution. And I said, isn't it nice that we moved your investments over to your new financial advisor 3 months ago? Because they would have gotten that $200,000 as well. That's over and above his 401k. But the whole point was, you can be an educated person. You can understand how the world works. And if you don't live in money every day, you are a perfect target for a scam. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and I've thought about this. So we talk a lot about real estate on this podcast. Real estate's a perfect example, right? People talk about you should buy your properties with like an LLC, and then you should have a management LLC on top of that, and that protects you, and nobody will know who owns that property. And then you put everything about your property on social media. Like, you didn't. You might as well have saved the lawyer fees if you just announced everything on social media of this property that you just tried to protect with 3 layers of LLC. Like, it doesn't all make sense. Even the way that, like, in a lot of ways, like, the experts are saying do these things, like the attorneys say do that, but they don't follow it up by, also, you probably shouldn't talk about all your real estate holdings on social media. And like, as business owners, and think, like, you're sort of expected to have some level of social media presence because people are going to look you up. You're going to be like, oh, I might want to work with this person. I might want to invest with this person. So they go and they look for you on social media. But like, so there's a lot of contradiction in terms of protecting yourself and also being a business owner. And I would imagine, as an athlete, you are sort of, your business is you, your brand is you. And so you are, the really smart ones are they know they'll be athletes for a decade if they're lucky, like, and longer if they're one of the greats. But like, you're not good. I mean, I'm from Boston. Tom Brady's like my hero, but I think there's no arguing, like, greatest quarterback of all time, right? But he spent his whole career, 20 years, setting himself up for now.
Yes.
And so, the brand of, like, Tom Brady is a business. He's the brand of being, now he's got all these businesses, and he's a commentator and all of this stuff. But all of these guys essentially have to do that, and in order to do that, you have to have a social media presence. Like, that's the way to do it now. And so now it means someone like yourself, like, is even more important to have protection on the back end.
Yes, and being curated. So what a lot of people don't realize is that athletes know that their name, image, and likeness is their brand. That is their business. So if you go and look up any athlete on any social platform, you're going to find that they don't post often, intentionally. They post when it has to do with a game that they played, or a sponsorship deal that they're working on, or their team's going to the playoffs. Like, insert important event here, and you'll see a post on it. Then they might share on their stories things that they're passionate about. Like, I have one guy who's super into cooking. I have another guy who reads the Bible every day and provides a Bible verse and his take on it every single day. I have a guy who is absolutely obsessed with his little girl, and he loves her, him and his wife. And so he shares them without showing their faces on his stories every day, but not on the grid. And the interesting thing that you will see with athletes that they have figured out over the last 3 to 4 years, and it has taken a lot of trial and error, and it has taken a lot of guys getting in a lot of trouble, being robbed, having things stolen from them, having people try to steal their identity, being blackmailed, extorted, all the things. There's a lot that goes on that people don't know about, and that's neither here nor there. That's going to happen in any industry. People get scammed every day. But these guys understand that they are targets, and so they curate everything to protect themselves. They are a brand, they are a business, but they have to protect that brand and business. And so you will see that everything is a curated highlight reel. There isn't a whole lot of real stuff about them on their social, because that's not what they're there for. And then, like a Tom Brady, same concept. he has designed his world around his brand. So everything that he does improves the quality and value of his brand. And it's all curated because he is a business. Just like you and I, we're businesses. We curate what we need people to see so they know what we do. But chances of me sharing a whole lot of my personal life on social, very small. And by choice. But we're also an older generation. The younger generation likes to share everything. And so we're also competing with different generational norms and expectations. And so my younger athletes, they've always shared everything. So to stop sharing everything is actually a bit of a challenge. Fascinating psychology behind all of this. It really is.
Yeah. Well, and I, when you talk about that, it makes me think, like, I feel like a lot of what, like, the athletes, you'll see most of it's stories, right? So it's gone in 24 hours. And so they don't, they don't put a lot that stays there, which makes total sense now listening to you talk about it. But yeah, it's usually like, oh, if you happen to see the story, that's where you actually might get a little bit of personal information, or like a picture of their kids or whatnot. Like, I think that there's it tends to be a bit more of a fleeting, I guess, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, where do you start? I know we're talking about different generations and the norms in those, but where do you start with people when you're kind of talking to them about protecting themselves?
I always start with core values. I don't think that you can handle money unless you have a better idea of how you want to live. So how do you want your money to move? Where do you want it to go? How do you want to live your life? I could sit 100 people in a room and they're all going to have different answers on what they value and what they want out of their money. And if you don't start there, because it's really identifying people's values and goals, if you don't start there, you can't build a financial foundation. So you've got to start with what they actually want, so that when they create that financial plan, they're able to actually execute it. And so I always start any room I get into, it doesn't matter what room I'm in. I need to know about the people in the room first, and I need to hear some of their stories. Other people around them need to hear those stories. It becomes part of the conversation. And then we can get into the pillars of personal finance. How do you create a budget? How do you make a budget that actually works? What if I hate budgeting? How do I use credit? How do I hire and fire someone on my financial team? What does it look like for me to actually write a goal and stick to it? Do I really need an emergency fund? What does it look like to have a conversation with my spouse when I don't agree with how they're spending money? These are just some of the things that we hit in workshops and in seminar settings. With NFL and NBA players, it's slightly different. We start with the, hey, you just won the lottery. Let's have a real candid talk about what this means for you. And we start with the protection piece. Here's how taxes are going to work. Here's who's going to be in your DMs. Be careful. These are the types of things to look out for to protect your money. And first contract is all about protection and stacking. It's keep the money, stack the money, grow the money. That's contract one. Contract two, the big one, is if a guy gets to contract two, that's where they make real money.
Yeah.
At that point, we're going, okay, you've stacked, you've done the right things for 3 to 4 years. And that's NBA and NFL. You'll have a 3, 4, or 5 year contract in the NFL. And the NBA, it's usually a 4-year deal, unless you're a two-way player, and then it's a 3-year deal, slightly different. Two-way player, G League, and they move between the G League and the NBA themselves, and their contracts look very different. But if you sign a 4-year deal, that's money guaranteed in most cases for the NBA. NFL, not so much. So we're stacking and we're protecting in that 4-year period. If you make it to contract 2, the conversation shifts. The conversation is now, how do we build generational wealth? How do we grow the pot? How do we mitigate taxes? And how do we make sure our financial team is actually there to support that? So it becomes a different conversation because the money is shifting and growing with that individual. But if they can't protect and stack in the first 4, there's nothing to grow. Because taxes will take half, agent fees, NFL dues, NBA dues, fines, which is a big one. The NFL gets fined a lot. They took the military playbook. I see a lot of NFL fines. And it's entertaining. I had a great one. I was with the Browns a couple of years ago, and one of my little brothers, who is to this day one of my favorite people, he got a fine because he showed up late to the game, and it was a $3,000 fine, $2,999.99, and it was a $3,000 fine. And he's like, it wasn't my fault. They blocked the road, and a bunch of players showed up to the game late. So there were like 30 fines in the locker room. And so of course they went and appealed it with the NFL, and that takes about 10 weeks. They take it out of your check. It was all the things. He called me After the season was over, because I think this was like week 12, maybe week 13, he's like, I got my money back. I was like, that's great. I'm so happy for you. He's like, we all appealed it because they shut down the road where all the players come in. I said, yeah, that's totally fair. Uh, but each of those conversations leads to a guy learning something new. And I think that's the important piece. And same thing with any employees I work with. Everything that we talk about will lead someone to a different avenue into the lifestyle choices they make. So we always start with core values, then we touch on the fundamentals, and then based on what that room needs or what that group needs, we do a lot of leadership conferences. So working with director level and up, we're teaching them how to teach their people about money. So that's, again, a different conversation. So it's really meeting the people in the room where they are, and every room looks slightly different. So being able to adjust and pivot.
Yeah. That concept, I'm thinking, like, probably applies quite well to us regular people too. You know, a lot of the athletes, they're going to get they get that first contract. They might not get the second contract, or they might not get the one that you read about or see on ESPN that, oh, I just went from making $2 million a year to $50 million a year because they're so good. Like that sort of thing is what we hear about, but a lot of cases that's not exactly what happens. Regular people aren't going to have that. You might change jobs, right, and get a raise, or you might, get some higher level of education that gets you paid a little bit more. But like ultimately, you're not usually having that huge jump, which makes that initial approach of sort of stacking almost that much more important, right?
Yes.
If you're in year 3 of a 4-year contract, and very likely you're going to hit that big payday on the next contract. You might get a little loose, but like you have some, shouldn't, but you might get an injury. There's all of that. But
Yes.
like in regular life, if you start with that good foundation, I mean, that is what will set you up then for the future to be able to think about things like generational wealth and all of that. So, I mean, starting, we talked about the different worry zones you have with your athletes. It's the young with the sort of normal people, it's elderly, but ultimately starting with these concepts early,
Yes.
for anybody is what is going to set you up for like long-term success in terms of your finances and potential for generational wealth. So stepping away from the athletes a little bit, what about that? Do you have a different approach when you're talking to people in business and that sort of like company type of atmosphere?
Yeah, absolutely. So athletes make the bulk of their money between 22 and 30, whereas an employee at a company is going to make the bulk of their money between about 45 and 60, just because of how the employer growth model works. You start as an intern, you move up, career development, you go to a different job, you take a new position, you move up the chain, maybe you start a business. There's all sorts of ways that your income can track up the graph. But the piece I start with all employees is if you can't manage $100, you can't manage 10,000. If you can't manage 10,000, you're not managing $1 million. So it doesn't matter how much is in the bank account, it's how you move it. It's how strategic you are with it. What do you want it to do? And this is where people get stuck. A lot of people don't know how money actually works, how you grow it, I'm not going to say avoid taxes. We don't avoid taxes. The IRS doesn't like that word. We mitigate taxes. How do I make things better for myself? Starting with employers, if you're not using a 401k match, I'll meet people that are like, oh, I don't need to save for retirement, and they're 29, 30. And their employer gives them a 6% match. You're leaving $4,600 to $5,000 a year on the table.
Yeah.
That could compound for the next 30. What are we doing? So being able to, and I know I'm looking at that going, oh my gosh, you're making a horrible financial decision. They don't know how compound interest works. They don't understand how investments work. They don't understand how growth works and what the time value of money is. And so with employees, the younger that we can get them to learn their benefits and understand their benefits if they're working a 9 to 5, or the faster we can get them into understanding how growth models work, with whether it's real estate investments, it's true stock market investments. You're just putting your money in a high yield savings account because you're nervous about the stock market. Showing them the different options is very crucial. And that's where the piece is missing, the bridge is missing. Everybody wants to earn money and everybody wants a big investment pot, but nobody's willing to do the work in the middle. And that's where we come in and we talk to employees that are 20 years old to 40 years old. What are you doing with cash flow? How much money are you saving? Do you actually have a retirement account? Do you use credit the right way? Because if I just look at a credit piece of anything that we do,
Mhm.
I can look at someone's finances and say, over a 20-year period, you spent $250,000 in interest to banks because you did not handle credit properly. You didn't have a good score. You bought 5 cars in that 20-year period, and all of the interest on that car is about 100 grand. So you really ended up paying the bank for 2 more cars, even though you didn't need to because you didn't have a good credit score. You're paying interest on credit cards, and the mortgage on your house is too high. All things that are completely fixable. But if you don't know how the system works, you don't know how to fix it. And so that's where I come in with employees and employers. It's how can I keep money in your pocket? How can I help you maximize benefits and get every piece of the compensation pie? And then how do I help you leverage lifestyle? Leverage the things that you want in order to get where you want to go. And that I think applies to everyone, whether it's an NFL athlete or it is an 18-year-old university student who's like trying to figure their life out to the 65-year-old who's about to retire. Everyone can take that information, and there's always a place to improve. I have yet to meet a person where I haven't been able to help them improve in one place or another, including, Hall of Fame great NBA players who sit in on stuff that we do and they're like, oh my God, I never knew that. I need to go do that with credit today. You can always learn, and money is always moving. So if you're not keeping up with the trends, you might actually be missing out on potential for leverage and gains. And so that's where my team comes in. We spend a lot of time making sure we're up to date on everything that we're doing and then creating things that people can actually use. I don't want to go in and talk about money for an hour. I want to be able to say, here are the 3 things you need to do today to improve credit. Here's 4 ways you can actually use budgeting to your advantage where you don't have to write the shit down or use an Excel spreadsheet. Like, there's easier ways to do it. Use digital banking, use the bucket system, use XYZ. And so giving people real tangible things that they can use to improve, that's all we focus on. I don't like theory. I like practicality.
Yeah, agree. So you mentioned with the athletes, you're just to talk about like your business model. You mentioned with athletes, the teams are paying. Yeah. Is it the same when you're going to a company? Is the company paying for you to come and speak with the employees?
Yeah, we're part of the benefits package. So the company pays us, or the EAP, which is the Employee Assistance Programs. EAPs for companies will bring us in for workshops and such. Sometimes it's a leadership division of one team in a large company that wants us to come in, and they're who pays. The employees don't. We do have consumer products and programs that are really inexpensive, so somebody can learn all of these basics using a workbook and some videos. It is self-paced. It's not as guided, but it's just do it on your time. So if you're busy, pick the book up 15 minutes a day and do it. Or 15 minutes a week actually is really all you need if you're learning for the first time. So yeah, we do it at all different levels in just different ways. The NFL has a different approach than employees. Employees are different than college students. Someone who's retiring is going to be different than an intern in their first position.
Yeah, of course. It sounds simple, but the 15 minutes a week thing, like doing something, figuring out something about this stuff, like it all matters because there's almost like infinite ways. You said you can always find improvements with people because there's almost like infinite ways to do a little bit better. And like, because of the compounding, it all, might seem like a little bit now, but it's like in 20 years and 30 years and 40 years, like it makes a really big difference on, what that looks like in the future. And I would imagine that's a big part of your conversation with people is like, we're looking at what we do today, but the actual impact that you see is going to be in a decade or 2 decades, or you really start. And I mean, just again, as I now know more about money. I don't know everything, but for a long time I didn't, and I look back and I'm like, man, I did a lot of stupid things, and also like lost a lot of money because of it. Like there were things had I done that I would be in a much better position if I had known it then. And also the same thing, like the things that I have done now, 5, 6, 7 years into it, I can look and say, oh, this is actually like doing something. Like this is actually, I mean, silly example, but I have young kids. My kids, we have a 529. Now I don't know why, like the college fund thing. So
Yep.
we have one of those. I have automatic, it automatically comes out of my account every month. I probably look at it maybe twice a year.
That's
And every
good. That's a perfect amount of time for a 529.
right, like every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, like we have a year of like at least 1 year of college ready for each of them, and they're 7 and 4. So like,
Awesome.
it's gonna be, and I know now that the fact that it got to that in the 5 years, it'll probably go up by 150, 200% in the next 5 years. Like it's going to grow exponentially, and so I'm like, oh, we're good. I don't have to worry about college will be more expensive, I'm sure by then, but I'm like, we're going to be in a good place just because of this one simple thing that I don't even notice. And that's the stuff that like little things like that that you could do the same thing with a brokerage account or some
The Roth
what.
IRA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
any.
think the visualization is the key. The world we live in now, and for the past, I would say about 15 years, people learn visually. There's a lot of audio learners still, but most people learn money visually. Money is too hard to conceptualize in your head. So if I were to say, okay, Jason, if you deposit $100 today, 20 years from now, if it's invested at 7% and you're in the S&P 500 and you're rocking and rolling, you're going to have $76,000. In your mind, you're like, well, how the hell did I get there?
Yeah,
What?
yeah,
What? What does that even look like? But if I give you a graph and I show you 20 years on the bottom of the graph and I show you $0 to $76,000 on the y-axis versus the x-axis, and I show you all the contributions that you make year by year and how that line goes up, you can see visually, oh, this is why I have to contribute $100 a month or $1,000 a year or XYZ and put your numbers here. Because we're visual and money is so conceptually difficult as it is to just throw stuff, numbers at people. They're like, everyone just kind of goes, I'm not good at math. It's not that we're not good at math. It's hard to conceptualize money, growth, and understanding the execution to get there. And so I think with one of the beauties of social media, one of the few things I do like about it is it's visual. You can see how things grow if the educator is giving you the right information. So I think it's incredibly important, even showing your kids when they get old enough, like we started with this, and this is how it grew every year, and here's why it grew like that every year, and here's the tax benefits. When they're 16, they should be learning that because they're going to start learning the value of beginning young, beginning at a younger age, than if they wait till they're 40, because that money is not going to have time to grow. And that's where educating people between 40 and 60 is so valuable because they have children that they can pass this knowledge on to now that can start younger. So financial education at any age is invaluable. You never know if you drop that pebble in the pond and the ripples go out, how many ripples you will actually create. So I always say financial footwork's the pebble, we drop it in the pond, and our goal is to create as many ripples in the community as we can. Because the more ripples that we create, the more people are impacted in a positive way, which means more money is growing. We're seeing more savings. We're seeing all of the good things. Credit scores are going up. Insert issue, or insert problem area in finance here, and we're trying to fix it.
yeah,
I think that visualization is the key to that, though. People cannot conceptually understand money without some sort of visualization.
yeah. Makes total sense. Makes total sense. Um, this is all very fascinating to me. I could talk for so long, but in the interest of your time, let me switch gears. I always ask every guest. The name of the show is Know Your Why. So I always ask every guest. What is your why? This is you have a unique, I think, perspective on this and background, and it's all such important stuff. But the way that you present it, I think is um, it's conducive to people actually like paying attention. So, what is your why? What's driving you at this point?
My dad's my why. It was my mom. She was very sick when I was 19. She died when I was 8 days into my 26th birthday. She died of an autoimmune disorder, and it changed how I think about money. I watched hundreds of thousands of, well, millions of dollars of medical bills. A lot of the insurance covered it, thank goodness. But I watched financial struggle for 7 years. I had no college fund. I was in debt up to my ears with college loans because my college savings account ended up going towards her medical bills. And my mom, for the longest time, was my why. Like, I was getting through college for her. I was finding a job to help pay her medical bills. Like, I wanted her to beat this thing. And autoimmune disorders are very unpredictable. They couldn't diagnose hers, so we were fighting that. And as time went on, my dad was my rock through the whole thing. And I have a little brother who's also just, we're thick as thieves. My family and I are super tight. But when my mom passed, she told me, she said, take care of your dad and your brother for me. And I was just, I was 26. I didn't know what the hell was going on in the world. And I was like, okay, mom, sure. And through that battle, my dad and I wouldn't say we had a great relationship with me growing up. Like, I was a teenage girl. This is, my dad grew up in a small town. He's a total cowboy, like 100% cowboy. So he and I, we're on different planets. And when my mom got sick, that really brought us together. And then when she passed, my dad was my best friend. We went through the hardest of things together. And so to this day, my dad and I see each other 6 days a week. He lives right down the street. He takes care of my dogs when I travel. He's my why. I do this so that he never has to worry about money again. My goal is in retirement, which he is finally in after all the shit he went through. He never has to worry about money again in his life. And if that means that I have to struggle a little, I'm A-okay with that. But that's my why. That's why we do it.
Amazing. I hope someday that my daughter says something like this about me. That's that'll be I hope we have a good relationship, but eventually she'll be a teenage girl, so I know that at some point she'll think dad's a real jerk, but I hope that then in the future she comes back around to that. So that's amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool. I'm very blessed.
That's great. When people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, we're on social media at Financial Footwork, and I'm so sorry if you can hear my dog screaming in the background. Somebody just rang my doorbell. Okay. We're at Financial Footwork, and then you can also pick up my book at trainyourmoney.com.
Okay, perfect. We'll get that in the show notes. It sounds like your dog needs you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hillary.
He's losing his mind.
Yeah, he's like, what's going on? No, thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation a ton, and I think what you're doing is really important. So thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Jason.
Absolutely. Folks listening, make sure you connect with Hillary. Please like, rate, and review the show. And as always, thank you for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?